iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz. The best or nothing.
Hi everyone, S.J. Arniger, Director of iHeartRadio Broadway. Today I have a very special interview. I'm sitting down with all four founders of the Be an Arts Hero campaign, Brooke Ishibashi, Jenny Grace McComb, Carson Elrod, and Matthew Lee Earlbach. Join me as we learn all about this amazing organization and how you too can also be an arts hero. Thank you so much for joining me today for iHeartRadio Broadway. Normally when I have these conversations, it's about a new cast album or new solo album. I want to say congratulations for putting this organization together, but at the same time, I want to say I'm so sorry that you have to put this together for what we're dealing with in the current climate and the pandemic and what we're going through with the arts community. So my first question, Matthew, is how did Be an Arts Hero come to be about?
Well, I will let Jenny, Carson, or Brooke answer that because they're actually the founders, and I hopped on a train that was already moving like a few weeks after. So I'll let the trio take it, and then I can answer something later.
Brooke, I believe you have the best the best answer for this.
So we when the pandemic struck and the institutional nationwide shutdowns just swept the nation, we looked at each other and we were like, oh, someone's going to come save us, right? You know, we're rank and file arts workers. The top dogs are gonna save everybody. You know, right. Where's the infantry? Where are the battalions? They're sure to come in any moment now, and nobody came in to save us. And so we decided that it was on us to advocate for ourselves, right? So we also realized there was a stark need for a mobilizing effort because everyone was advocating for themselves individually, and in effect that somewhat diluted our efficacy, we thought, because everyone was just like, hey, I want this, hey, I want this, hey, I want this, hey, I want this, but there needed to be like a unified front, right? And I think that's the thing about our sector is that we're so vast. There are so many mini sectors within our arts and culture sector that everyone's advocating for themselves. So we decided that there needed to be a unified front of, you know, rank and file blue collar arts workers, shoulder to shoulder with celebrities, shoulder to shoulder with the institutions of the arts and culture sector of America. That there was a gap, and we decided that we could fill that gap. So that's how we started it. And we started as a kitchen table movement where it was literally just the three of us working 12 to 19 or more hours a day, every day, nonstop, to build coalitions and to get people to pay attention. So it's evolved very quickly, and we're really only about 8 weeks old, folks?
Yeah, like more like 9.5 at this point, I think. But just to piggyback on what Brooke was saying, like a lot of it came from, we thought the shutdown was going to be a 6-week intermission, right? And so as things stretched on, we saw people get dropped by their agents, not because their agents couldn't send them out on gigs. It's because the agencies didn't have any money from commissions, and so the agencies were closing. And we saw places like the Cirque du Soleil go bankrupt. We saw little places like the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York and Improv Olympic in Chicago say, we're done forever. So what we were seeing is we were kind of seeing a slow motion unraveling of the fabric of our universe. And we were like, okay, so somebody is going to step in and speak on behalf of the creative economy. And that's what, Brooke and Matthew talk about all the time, is that it's easy for a lobbyist to go to Congress and say, hey, I represent these 10 airlines. They are in trouble. They need $50 billion. That's an easy thing to understand. It's harder to go in and say, hey, there's 600,000 interdependent small businesses across the country, from the Metropolitan Opera to the Dance Theater of Harlem to the Billings Symphony to the Upright Citizens Brigade to the Duplex to a drag cabaret. The creative economy is vast, and it is in every state, and there are so many constituencies. They can't hire one lobbyist to represent all of those. And so what Be an Arts Hero is is we we are the organization that says, hi, we represent the entirety of 4.5% of GDP that's been left out of the relief conversation.
Well, and I think that's the amazing thing that you all are doing is this is not just about New York City. This is about coast to coast, the arts community in general. It's from the big entities to the little tiny mom and pop shops that are doing arts in their backyard, basically. And I have to applaud you because I feel like in some conversations, those little organizations have been left out of the conversation. And I feel like you have helped bring that back to the forefront with this campaign. So can you just talk a little bit about why you decided to make it kind of a coast to coast campaign and not just, let's talk about Broadway and Hollywood?
I mean, go ahead, Jenny.
I mean, I think part of the reason why we're able to think in those terms is because we're members of those smaller communities. You know, those are, I'm the marketing director of a very small downtown theater in New York that's scrappy and little. You know, Matthew has had a long historied relationship with the Chicago art scene, Brooke with Oregon. Carson's worked all over this country, but particularly in Massachusetts and DC. You know, we all have worked all over this country in projects and with companies big and small. And so we understand that the arts and culture sector is more than just Hollywood and New York. Beyond that, it's you know, when we talk about the Brookings Institution, which I'm sure we'll probably get into later, it really paints a very stark picture about the creative economy. And if you look at NASA, the other NASA, NASAA.
The National Assembly of States Arts Agencies.
Thank you, Carson. You'll see that there isn't a state in our union that doesn't employ tens of thousands of arts workers and doesn't bring billions with the B to that state's GSP. So it's actually would be negligent on our part if we didn't bring every state in the union into this conversation, plus the District of Columbia, which technically isn't a state, but is a very vibrant arts and culture portion of our sector. Yeah.
Just to piggyback on what everyone is saying, when we talk to the different excuse me, the Senate offices and House offices and everyone that we're talking to, we are talking about 5.1 million arts workers representing 675,000 small businesses generating $877 billion. That's not all celebrities. That's the mom and pop dance studio in Oklahoma. That's the improv place in North Carolina. These are the costume shops, lighting shops, sound shops that support these businesses. So what we talk about, again, is this highly interdependent ecosystem that is storefronts. It is rank and file. And so what we're doing, the story we've been telling about the arts for decades, about how, you know, the existential, creative, spiritual worth that we generate, the value we generate, is true. We live that every day. That's why we're doing it. That story is not working in government. So we're retelling the story in economic terms, and it just so happens our economic story is really, really powerful at the national level and at the local level, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it.
So for those that, there's a statement on your website, without an arts and culture recovery, there really can be no recovery to the American economy. I believe it. I mean, I'm in the arts sector, so I completely understand that. But I mean, I know, Matthew, you were just talking about numbers. For those that may not truly believe the economic impact the arts and culture sector has on the United States, can you just dive in a little bit deeper on how we make up such a great portion of our economy?
Yeah, well, not only is it that we are $877 billion in value added to GDP, and that's everything. I mean, everything that we've been talking about. That's movies, film, television, Broadway, plays, symphonies, dance. I mean,
museums.
You can just, museums. You can just go on and on and on, and very quickly get to that 877 billion number in all 50 states. But what we're saying is there can be no true American economic recovery without an arts recovery, because not only do we have this $877 billion in value added to the economy, there are so many other sectors of the US economy that are reliant on our existence. So for instance, we like to talk about the Muni Theater in St. Louis, right? It's a 12,000 seat venue. And from what we've understood, the artistic director was speaking on the Stars in the House, Seth Rudetsky's thing. And the artistic director was saying 3 or 4 restaurants close to his venue have closed. Like they're gone. They have closed because that audience isn't there. There's nobody to eat at his restaurant. And so 68% of tourism is arts and cultural. So when we think about, if there's not a full creative economy recovery, that's going to knock into hospitality, transportation, tourism. So yes, it's important that a floor be put underneath 4.5% of GDP so that the 5.1 million people that work in arts can survive this crisis and have jobs to come back to on the other side of it. But on top of that, without relief for our sector, the negative impacts on many, many other sectors will be catastrophic.
Well, it's like I like to talk about the trickle-down effect all the time, because like my parents live on Long Island and they live by the John Engman Theater. So when the John Engman Theater is not doing a production, the restaurants lose out, the arts and crafts studio loses out, the home goods store loses out, even the parks and recreation sector loses out. And I don't think a lot of people truly understand that trickle-down effect.
I think I talk about Oregon Shakespeare Festival constantly. You know, we were lucky to have artistic director Nataki Garrett on our Ghostlight panel earlier this week, and I was there all of last year. And it was so striking to me to see the effect of the idea that Oregon Shakespeare Festival's survival affects the survival of not just the city of Ashland, but the entirety of Southern Oregon. So right now they're in the middle of a devastating wildfire, and so that's just chaos, right? But the idea that OSF is a $40+ million institution, and so much of that economy, that local economy, is based on the tourism that comes in because of OSF, that's generated by OSF, right? So we're not just talking about the arts workers who are employed by Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is huge in itself. We're talking about the local gas station attendants. We're talking about the local restaurant workers, the local hotel owners. We're talking about local jobs and local economy. So when we go to senators' offices, we don't come in with the philosophical argument of this is why arts and culture matters. We go in and we say, this is just numbers, and you can't argue with numbers. It's just cold, hard numbers. And I think, especially for our Republican senators across the aisle, to them, it's nonpartisan, because it's just about economics. It's just about bringing back their local jobs and their local economies so that they can help rebuild coming out of this crisis. So it's interesting that when you just stick to the economic arguments, it's, as Carson says, it's unimpeachable.
And I just want to add that an arts night out, right? They've done a study, I believe it's with Americans for the Arts, that an arts night out adds over $30, and excuse me, my cat is being naughty. Edgar, stop. Adds 30. Why doesn't somebody else take this for 1 second while I handle my cat?
Go ahead, Matthew.
Well, I was just going to say that, to Brooke's point, we are a jobs multiplier, and we are also, when we talk about arts workers, which I think is really important, we're talking about the arts economy and arts workers. We are talking about kitchen table jobs. This is a community issue. This is a kitchen table issue. A lot of these jobs are union jobs, and they're jobs that that the nation doesn't necessarily realize. Just to talk about Steppenwolf really quick, that's a small business that employs over 100 people full time. That's a pretty big small business. The product is not a vacuum cleaner. The product requires the hiring of people every 3 to 4 months. And in that, there's in the chat, I just want everyone to know, Arts Night Meow is what Brooke wrote. So, it requires the hiring of people to create the product, and then to engage with the product, every night, about 7-8 times a week, you require more people to engage in the product. So it is a people business, and that's just for performance. That's just for opera, dance, and theater and live music. When we're talking about museums and cultural spaces, and we're talking about underrepresented communities, the BIPOC community, LGBTQ community, and kids, these are also jobs that serve these constituencies. And not to be coarse about it, but we are having an economic issue. There's lots of jobs in these fields that generate lots of money, not to mention they are the expression of these communities. We are the expression of democracy. When you think of Chicago and you look at blues and jazz, the number of blues and jazz houses in Chicago, Improv Olympic, which Carson mentioned, just closed, Second City, Steppenwolf, Goodman, Museum of Science and Industry. I mean, Illinois is a $30 billion arts economy. That is huge. And that's not just Chicago, that's all across the state. Urbana-Champaign, where I went to school, University of Illinois, Krannert Center is this international institution in the middle of the cornfields. And it drives this incredible arts economy in the middle of Illinois. So, the same thing for Williamstown in Massachusetts, which all of us have touched at some point. These little anchor, these little stars anchor these orbits all around the country. And so why this campaign is so important is because it is talking about this constellation that is so overlooked. Jenny, do you want to take it?
Oh, I just I do want to talk a little, or I want to pass the mic to Carson to talk about Richard Florida and some of the work that he's been doing in terms of a creative economy. The only thing I was going to say about an arts night out is that it encapsulates a lot of different sectors, right? You hire a babysitter, you get gas or ride the train, or hire a cab to take you there. You have dinner beforehand. Then you go to the actual event that you paid a ticket for. And then usually you have drinks afterwards and then transportation back. So an average night out for an arts event contributes around $30 and some odd cents, around $30.80 something cents to ancillary businesses outside of the arts and culture sector. That's not including the price of admission, right? So when you're talking about an arts and culture institution like the Muni, right, with 12,000 people going nightly, you multiply 12,000 by $30 and you understand why Matthew calls them stars, right? Why other businesses circle around them and are dependent on them, right? So with that, I kind of want to pass it to Carson, because he puts it so eloquently about the creative economy and Richard Florida, and the talk about how you can rebuild an economy.
Well, there's a lot of people right now talking that are already kind of focused on rebuilding. Be an arts hero, I want to be very, very clear. We aren't pretending that relief won't happen or can't happen. We are working all day, every day to try to make it happen, because it's going to be really hard to have an arts recovery without arts relief. So we are pressing hard now for a massive capital injection into our industry, the same way there has been for airlines, financial services, et cetera. That said, one of the things that we always talk about in these meetings with Senate offices is, with our outsized rate of return on investment, so the arts economy typically grows at a rate of 4.16%, which is nearly double the rest of the economy at like 2.2. So if you were an intrepid senator that wanted to have a robust American economic recovery on the other side of the COVID crisis, there are sectors of the economy where investment might have a higher rate of return. We are that sector. And so people like Richard Florida and Michael Seaman and Jenny Gersten are really kind of, waving a flag and saying, look over here, we have a way to help rebuild. Jenny Gersten just did a great piece in Bloomberg a week and a half ago talking about the best way to recover is through an arts recovery. And she brought up, we were just talking about Williamstown. She used Mass MoCA in North Adams, Massachusetts, as an example of taking an existing dead piece of real estate, just an abandoned factory that had just been sitting there doing nothing for decades. And then the investment came, Mass MoCA was created. It is now one of the premier modern art museums in the world. People travel from all over the planet to come to North Adams, Massachusetts, this tiny little town in the middle of the Berkshires. And whenever I go to Mass MoCA, I've worked in the Berkshires a lot as an actor, and every Monday I just want to go to Mass MoCA. Everybody is there. It's teeming, and you can see there's all these bars and restaurants and all this, the parking lots are full, and it's just, and so what Richard Florida noted in his book, The Rise of the Creative Class, was if you want to know where an economic boom is about to happen, just look for where artists are. Yep. So a lot of people have used that. Municipalities, I think most notably, I think Omaha, Nebraska, has been like, how do we incentivize this constituency, this demographic to come here? And the results are you have all these cool indie film centers and like breweries with stages in the back of them and stand-up comedy and burlesque, and like you just have this really diverse, exciting. The great thing about it is, not only is it really economically exciting, it just makes life worth living wherever it is. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the reason New York City is New York City isn't because of Wall Street. It's because of Broadway and downtown theater and the museums. It's because of the Frick and the Rubin. It's because of PS 122 and New York Theater Workshop and the Metropolitan Opera and the ballet. That's why New York is New York. Yeah. And that's why everybody wants to be here. So the more that you can do that in every city all over the country, the more you're just going to have this really vibrant quality of life that also directly correlates to economic prosperity.
It's why towns want things like the International Thespian Festival to come to their towns, because when you have 7,000 theater students descend on Lincoln, Nebraska, you're injecting so much money into that local economy for 1 week. And that 1 week alone helps make up half of their budget. So I completely agree with you. It's all about where you're going and the arts in those towns. Brooke, you were going to say something?
No, along with your point, we talked to our friend, Professor Michael Seaman, who's the co-author of the Brookings Institution study on COVID-19's impact on the creative arts economy. He talks about two things specifically: how music scenes bring in other scenes, and how he talks about the lost generation of young people who would then become arts workers, who would then be contributing to the creative arts economy. So when you talk about the International Thespian Festival, it made me think, we're talking about potentially an entire lost generation of young people, right? So if there is a mass exodus from the main cultural hubs, if there's a mass exodus from these major cities because people can no longer afford to live there because all of the institutions have imploded, when there's a mass exodus, that means you lose an entire generation of young people who would have come up in the creative economy, who would have been contributing into the creative arts economy, and then contributing to the larger American economy. So what is that impact? We have to think about, over time, how is that going to affect an entire generation of workers, and how to affect our economy? What is that domino effect going to look like if every major city is experiencing a mass cultural exodus, if every major city is depleting an entire generation of young people who would have been joining the creative workforce, right?
And that's the thing that scares me about arts education, is because it's not just about putting on a show in your cafetorium. You're literally talking about licensing companies, royalty to the creators of those shows, then who you're hiring to create sets and costumes, the ticketing agencies that are just built for school ticketing companies. I mean, it's a whole mass world that is right now not working and has furloughed 90% of their staff. So it's that arts education sector touches on me, because I was at Playbill as the director of education for 8 years. And so I know that world so well, and watching these companies that have been built from the ground up and they're no longer working. It's sad.
And
Jay,
oh, you go.
I would just really quickly, what you're speaking to is super important to us. We have just started working with Jonathan Chapman and TYA USA and a large coalition across the country addressing this very thing, because we will have a lost generation, and we want to do everything we can to put a floor under them. And there's a study that the NEA and he co-wrote that talks about TYA and Theater for Young Audiences across the country and arts programs. And there's a number in there that 67% of young people who attend theater and arts end up going to the theater later in life. And so, you know, that number is interesting on its own. Like that's a powerful number. That number has a dual purpose too. That 67% means that you are training people to become arts consumers. And so there's an economy before them because they understand how to consume the arts. Absolutely. Which later in life, if it's not there, you don't think it's for you. It's just like it's over there. So this is not only a present issue like you're speaking to, this is a future issue too. And so the time we lose here, and all the emotional development skills and the collaborative skills and social skills, that's really the most important thing. But we are also losing the future economy and arts consumers too, which is devastating.
Absolutely.
And I just want to piggyback on that and say what that means is that only those who can afford accessibility get accessibility. So then we start talking about we see you white theater, right? And about changing the conversation of within our sector about how to restructure our sector to be inclusive. And it starts from a young age, right? It starts from the ability of having arts accessible to all children of all socioeconomic and ethnic backgrounds, so that it's not just the rich kids that are getting an arts education, because that high percentage of those who engage in the arts from a young age later become involved in the arts later. The more accessible we can make arts education to all children, the more diverse our arts sector will become. So it does become about, very quickly we start seeing how these issues intersect, right? So that's all I'm saying.
Well, I do want to ask the question because, Carson, I was watching your Instagram Live with Barrett Foa the other day, and you were talking about calling Senator Murkowski's office on that Instagram Live. So I'd love to talk about that, but more so, what has been the reaction from calling senators and calling local politicians? What has the reaction been to this campaign?
I think what's been really exciting about it is when we first started, all that we talked about all day, every day is how do we get Chris Evans and Lin-Manuel Miranda to talk about this nonstop, because no one will listen to us, right? So we have to get the people that are at the very highest level in our sector they have to go be the arts heroes. And all our focus for the first couple of weeks is like, do you have a friend who might have a backdoor way to get in touch with this superstar celebrity? Because I think that person's cousin used to babysit we were just racking our brains, like, how do we activate the most famous people in our community to advocate on our behalf? And we were constantly talking about calling senators, and like all of our advocacy on social media had the action item of just like, all we can think to do is just write your senators, call your senators. We were doing that. And then what happened about 4 weeks in is Matthew delivered this gorgeous open letter to the 116th United States Senate, which made this economic argument so eloquently, so clearly, so beautifully. And then it went viral. And some of the most amazing arts institutions and artists and rank and file blue collar arts workers in this country signed on to this open letter. And about a week later, we started getting meetings. So we became the people that were going into the rooms where it happened and having these conversations. And our very first conversation was with the GOP office, Senator Tom Tillis, and we didn't know what we were getting into. We've never done this kind of work before. So we didn't know if we were going to get laughed out of the room or if they would think of arts and culture in an incredibly partisan way, or I don't know, be mean to us. And we went into the room and we made this argument, and they heard this argument in the way that we made it. And we talked about Playmakers Rep. We talked about Vivian Benesh, the artistic director there, and how she cannot do theater there until next summer at the earliest. So we were saying, listen, for the actors, the singers, the dancers, the ushers, the box office people, that federal pandemic unemployment compensation is not a disincentive for those people to work. Those people cannot work until next summer. And you do not want them to do another job. They add too much to the economy of North Carolina for them to do something else. One, there aren't jobs there for them to do. The side hustles for the arts economy, are mostly gone as well. But you don't want us to do something else with our lives. We are too important to the economy of North Carolina or to the United States for us to do anything else. And we were not laughed out of the room. In fact, the gentleman we spoke to said, please send me more information. And so every room that we are in has different levels of enthusiasm or interest, but there is no room that we go into where we aren't taken seriously and we have follow-up conversations. And as more things come in, as that Brookings Institution study came out, we instantly started sending that back. So as Brooke said at the beginning of the conversation, there's a lot of people in our industry right now that are in crisis. And so there's a lot of different little mini factions within the creative economy that are like, put relief over here, put relief over here, put relief over here. What we're trying to do is we're trying to maintain a holistic point of view and go in and change the conversation to have it be broader. So we're not just going in and saying, hey, this little area of the creative economy needs relief in this way. What we're trying to do is help our legislators wrap their minds around the size and scope of the problem writ large and appropriate appropriate levels of relief to handle the size of the problem.
And with that, Matthew, you have the DAWN Act. It's the Defend Arts Workers Now. And I'm curious about how that legislation piece came to be, and also how is it different from other acts that are out there? I know Amy Klobuchar has the Save Our Stages Act. So how is the DAWN Act a little bit different, and what is it there to accomplish?
Totally. So first of all, Dawn came about through these meetings we were having. We are not trained lobbyists. We are activists and advocates for sure, and concerned citizens. In these meetings we were having, we had three key talking points: an extension of FPUC, a 100% COBRA subsidy, and $43.85 billion. That number is 5% of $877 billion. That 5% is precedential because the top 10 airlines received $50 billion per their $1 trillion in the last COVID package. So we were looking for precedents wherever we could find them. Mm-hmm. Dawn is part of that. We looked at the deficiencies in Save Our Stages, in Restart, and we thought, when we had conversations with different offices, both Republican and Democrat, they're like, help us make our job easier. Do you have any bill language? And we're like, bill language? We're telling you now, you write the bill language. That's what you're here for. They have a lot going on, and so we need to make their jobs easier. So it was recommended that we look at a template that already existed. They're like, don't reinvent the wheel. We're also not legislators. So we looked at the deficiencies and we looked at Save Our Stages, and we thought, all right, well, we're not saying no but to anything. We're saying yes and. Constituencies are taking care of themselves. Of course, that's their job. Unions need to do that. The NEVA and all these organizations that are coming out, of course, you're trying to save your own ass. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We saw all the holes in the policy proposals, and we said, well, what about these people? What about 1099 workers? So that's where Dawn came from. And it was really a synthesis of things we had already been talking about and putting it into a codified bill summary form as a salvo back to the senators that we've been speaking with, and circling back and going, here's the thing you asked for, what's next? And then in future conversations, we were able to say, we have this bill language, it's called DAWN, Defend Arts Workers Now. The only way to get through this economic darkness is by the light of dawn. Great acronym, light, we love it. It's very playful. It's also like, you know, shit's dark and this is the dawn of a new era, because also, like I mentioned before, the days of diminished returns for arts workers and the days of being left out of the conversation are done. They're over. The mobilization that is happening in our sector and across the country proves that. I was on the phone with Senator Jones, who was with me, Brooke, right? He was so many meetings with Senator Jones and the artistic director, Rick Dildine of the Alabama State Theater, Alabama Shakespeare Festival, which is a really important institution. The head of my acting program went there. Michael Emerson went there. Lots of people. Who would have thought in the middle of Alabama, you'd have this incredible institution? We do. We're lucky to have it. He's talking about this 70-year-old, I'm going to get this wrong, but he was a prop master who had started off as an intern decades ago in the 70s and was ready to retire. And he didn't retire, or he resigned, and because he wanted his assistant to be able to have pay. So like now they've lost this person. You know, these places are families. They're family businesses. I've worked at Utah Shakes for a number of seasons, and you know that these are in a lot of ways they're family businesses. So when we talk about also, you know, who arts workers are, where arts workers are, and what arts workers are, they're in Alabama, they're in Utah, they're all over. So as we talk to these different Senate offices, when we're talking about Dawn, we're making clear that this $43.85 billion is authorizing existing institutions. We don't want to create any new government. Mm-hmm. We want to authorize the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and the SBA, 43.85 through their dispersal mechanisms to the operators, employees, and artists of live venues, recording venues, cultural spaces, and related businesses. So it's putting a floor underneath all these places that SOS and Restart doesn't. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent there, and just to talk about those deficiencies, SOS and Restart, you know, one is a loan program. I don't know anyone that can pay back a loan right now. And also, like I mentioned, we want a comprehensive arts worker bill that takes care of everybody. Carson.
And I think the thing is, like, I applaud someone like an A.B. Klobuchar for putting the Save Our Stages program together, but it's only for really indie stages. I mean, at the end of the day, it's for one group of arts organizations. I think what you guys are doing, again, back to the original part of the conversation, it is a coast to coast, from large to small, from, you know, full corporations to mom and pop places. And I think for those that want to learn more about Dawn, I know you have the website for, you know, Be an Arts Hero, but is there any place else where people can go to find out more about Dawn, or how to send it to a senator or a local politician?
I'd like to speak to the idea that right now, Dawn is basically a bill summary. It's a 2-paragraph bill summary that represents the intelligible principle of what we're trying to do. But very much the bill itself is being gamed out among coalitions. So what we would like is all 5.1 million arts workers to work with us on crafting this Dawn together. So we know the intelligible principle is it needs to be this much money administered through these channels, but just the specifics of like, okay, what needs to happen for, you know, indie venues, what needs to happen for regional theaters, what needs to happen for community art centers where vets do art therapy. That is very much an evolution. Everything that we are about changing the conversation about the creative economy, and we want Dawn to be a conversation starter. So right now, what we're hoping that these Senate offices can hear the conversation that we're trying to have, and in the next 3 weeks, if an ambitious COVID-19 relief package comes together, this can be something that is part of a larger omnibus legislation that can happen right now. And if it doesn't happen right now, Dawn can be an ongoing conversation in how the creative economy needs relief and how to give it the relief it needs in the way that it needs it.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off of what Carson said and just say, alongside the 3 to 5 meetings we're having with senator offices a day, we're also taking a ton of meetings with coalitions, with unions, with coalitions, with organizations, because we don't want to guess at what our sector needs. We want to make this truly a bill that puts a floor under all of us, right? So we are learning, and with every new meeting, we're learning what this bill needs to contain specifically so that every single member of our sector is taken care of. And that's a tall order. So it takes, one of the things I like to say is democracy is a verb. It takes those within our community to dialogue with us and to tell us what they need specifically and what would help them specifically. So that's the meetings we're taking right now so that we can craft legislation that actually helps all of us. We talked a little bit about the other bills that are drifting around right now. SOS specifically is one I can speak to, and that's an example of a bill that has its heart in the right place. And we will not, if it gets passed, there will be no tears shed because it will help a section of our economy, right? But it doesn't help. It doesn't even help those that it's supposed to help, right? So the metaphor I like to use is, it's like an entire house is on fire and the fire department comes to one room of the house and extinguishes just that room in the house. Not only does that not help the whole house, but that one room will soon be engulfed in flames again. So like with SOS, it only covers venues, producers, promoters, and talent agencies. So specifically venues are the ones, and we applaud NIVA, and we want to work hand in hand with NIVA, and obviously if this passes we'll be so happy, but specifically for venues, right? So the idea of this is to put a floor underneath those venues, but those venues can't reopen without the costume shops, instrument shops, set design studios, lighting design studios, AV and audio houses, dance companies, we can't, we're keeping the brick and mortar businesses alive, but you can't have a rock show without AV equipment, without lighting equipment, without sound and audio, and without music studios to help cultivate those arts workers' work, right? The same thing for Broadway or theater venues, right? You might keep the theater, the actual physical theater alive, but without the costume shops, the lighting shops, the set design shops, without those organizations and those companies, those small businesses also taken care of, you're opening to an empty stage, unlit, uncostumed, and without taking care of your arts workers, without a performers on stage. So we applaud the bill. We want it to succeed, but we want to do more because this is we're part of an ecosystem, and we have to take a holistic approach to relief.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think just going back and talking about that trickle down effect, I don't think people truly understand how much the arts definitely trickles down in each and every community. I think people just think, school teachers and community theaters, everything's done in-house. They can put up a show very quickly, but I don't think they truly understand how much the arts affects a community and a neighborhood by just doing one show.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like, a little community theater in Topeka, Kansas, they're buying all their materials to build the sets from the Home Depot. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They're going to the Walmart and to the downtown shop and to the thrift shop to buy the costumes. It's like, it's a big part. It's a community partner. It's a great economic community partner. In addition to all the things that we said earlier about an arts night out, just the institution itself is a good economic partner, like just spending money and et cetera.
So here's my big question. For those that want to get more involved with Be an Arts Hero, how do they get involved? And do you have to be in the performing arts world as a performer, a creator, to be involved in Be an Arts Hero?
I'll say everyone can go to beanartshero.com this minute, and we give you all of the easy ways to get involved. The number one thing is directly contact your senators, whether that is calling them, writing them, tweeting them, tagging them with our graphics that Jenny Race Mackel made. You know, there are so many easy 1-minute ways to contact your senator. We have
I'm going to interrupt you just for 1 second, because I know that a lot of people think that calling a senator is going to be super complicated, that it's going to be an in-depth conversation, that it's like super scary. I know it's not, but can one of you explain that it's actually one of the easiest things that you can do?
And as you were saying, you know, we do Insta Lives with celebs or prominent figures calling their senators live. And so we give you a script if you're phone shy. There are such easy ways for people to we give you all of their social media handles, all of their phone numbers, and a script. So you can say, this is what I'm asking for. This is why we need to give the arts and culture sector proportionate relief and $43.85 billion through the Dawn Act, da, 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 da. So we break it down and make it so easy for people. And I think Jenny wants to tag on too. I think if people are phone shy, watch our Insta Lives and see that it takes a minute of your time, and it's so easy.
Again, the one that, Carson, you did with Barrett Foa, I think is a perfect example of truly how easy it is. And plus, it's a fun conversation to watch in itself.
Oh, thank you. That was a really fun conversation. But yeah, I mean, the thing that people should understand is, one, your taxes pay the salaries of all 435 people in the House of Representatives and all 100 people in the Senate. So they work for you, and they are there to represent your interests. And the people who work in their offices, who answer the phones, all they do all day is answer the phone, and a lot of times just have people screaming at them. And so, you know, if you call and just very politely are like, hi, I am one of the 5.1 million people who is an arts worker in this country, and we need to be part of the relief conversation. Or if you are one of the Americans who consumes, enjoys, or relies on art, and by that I mean every single American, if you are one of those Americans, you too can call your senator and say, 4.5% of GDP is being left out of the relief conversation. Also, I rely on the arts for my mental health, and I need them to survive. So anybody, like, there's 300 million people in America, 200 million are voting age. Any one of those people can call their senator and say, we need relief for the creative economy right now. And it will be meaningful if they do.
And yeah, Jenny.
No, I just wanted to say, very often you'll just get an answering machine. So it really is sort of a much lower stakes than some people think it is. So very often you're just saying what you need to say. And again, a script and a database with every senator's direct numbers is at our website and also on our Instagram bio. So we make it super easy to find your senator's phone number, and we also give you a script that makes it really easy for you to just leave a message at the tone. I think we all can kind of comfortably do that. I know I get nervous when I think somebody's going to answer, but very often they don't. But every single one of those messages is recorded, and so it really makes a difference to these senators if, say, 2,000 people call a day about the arts and culture sector.
And I will say, your team has done such an amazing job with the infographics, the scripts, the assets that are all on the website are so fantastic. So please go to beanartshero.com. I promise you, everything is right there for you, and you will absolutely be well taken care of by all the information on the site. I want to ask one last question. I know that you've been doing some town halls. I know your Instagram and your socials are outrageously amazing. But what's next? What's the next step with town halls, with getting information to people?
So I'll answer that a little bit, since I I run a lot of our socials, but I don't want to leave out of the conversation Ali Wonderly, who has taken over a lot of our graphics. I used to generate all of the graphics myself. Up until recently, like the last couple of weeks, everything on our Instagram page was just done by me. But I want to make sure that I amplify the amazing work of Ali Wonderly specifically, and Ava Koploff, who is our social media manager within this. And we also have Sonia Diaz, who's running our town halls now. And so the next on the list is we're going to have a town hall. We know we're very theater heavy. That comes from all of us having a background in theater. So we're going to be arranging some town halls for the music world and for the dance world specifically. We already did one for the nightlife world, but we'll be circling back to them again. So we're looking to coalition build with all portions of our sector. So that's part of that's next. We'll be releasing we'll be streaming rather our Ghostlight panel, which I'm really excited about. Brooke hosted. It's with Nataki Garrett, Nicole Salter, Michael Seaman, and
Kenny.
Peter Marks and Kenny M. Green. So these this group, I am so excited about this because I think it's a very fulsome conversation about the crisis and how we rebuild. So those are next steps in terms of what's coming next on our socials. Carson?
And then just on a macro level, we exist to change the conversation about the creative economy in America. And so one of the things that's just macro, big, long-term, there's a Secretary of Transportation, there's a Secretary of Agriculture. The arts and culture sector, it does hundreds of billions of dollars more in value added to the economy than agriculture, construction, transportation. There needs to be a Secretary of the creative economy. That has to happen. There needs to be somebody in the room where it happens, like advocating for our sector and thinking about our sector at all times. We're too important to the economy to be left out of these legislative conversations.
And I want to say, as we talk about how to rebuild coming out of this crisis, because we have an opportunity to create a wholly new terrain, right? We will not go back to before. It's very important to us that as we are going through a time of social reckoning and systemic upheaval, we are so astutely focused on trying to correct the imbalance that already exists in our culture. The idea that we have an opportunity to be the voices for the most marginalized, oppressed, and disadvantaged communities through the advocacy work we're doing. And so much of that is not just, rebuilding the arts and culture sector. It's, I think, rebuilding the communities that are affected, who are disproportionately negatively affected by the pandemic and by the effects of this economic crisis as well.
I'm just absolutely blown away by what you all have been able to put together in 8.5, 9 weeks. I mean, it's truly amazing. I applaud you all for coming together and making this happen. But again, as someone that has been kind of in the trenches with more of the upstarts and the mom and pop places, I know I work for a large corporation now, but it's absolutely fantastic to see from coast to coast an organization supporting arts and culture in general, and not just Broadway, even though we're all Broadway people and all theater people. But I applaud you so much, and I've wanted to talk to you guys for a little while. So I really appreciate it. I know Matt got kicked off, so I think
and we're meeting with a senator in 5 minutes, so we should
and
check out
Matt's closing thoughts. He wanted us to say, tell everyone who's watching and listening that calling your House reps and your senators matters. They tell us constantly, every day we're in these meetings, they need to hear from you. So if we have 5.1 million arts workers just pestering the heck out of them, it'll make a difference. So please do it. Get loud.
And go to beanartshero.com. So thank you guys so much. And I wish you nothing but the best. And we're here to help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
iHeartRadio Broadway, driven by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.